Hello and welcome to this video guide of ApolloBoot OMNI Release 9.1. In this video guide, I'm going to take you through the whole process of installing 10 operating systems on ApolloBoot OMNI so you can enjoy them on your favorite V4 device. Let's get started. What do we need? We need, of course, a V4 device like a Firebird, Ice Drake, Manticore or standalone. We will need a CF card, a reader, and we will need a physical genuine CF card of 64 gigabytes or larger. I can recommend 128. You also need a micro SD card, reader, and a micro SD card itself if you want to use the slow install method, and also if you want to use the excellent EmuTOS image to have the Atari emulator. You will need a 16 gigabyte SD card as well. So let's get started. First, open the mail you have gotten after registration of ApolloBoot OMNI on the apollocomputer.com website, and you can follow the link that will bring you to the download location. There you will find three files: the CF card image file, the SD card file, and the guide. Please use the guide alongside the video guide to have optimal results. Okay, just download the two image files, one for the CF and the other one for the SD. The SD card is about 1 gigabyte because it contains already the macOS base image and the EmuTOS image, and the CF card is only 200 megabytes. You can also see there's a macOS folder for additional disks with Office or games preloaded. We can download them later on. So let's see how the download is progressing. Okay, going nicely. And then we move over to the download directory. So your download directory should contain these two files. And we unzip now the CF card image. And as you can see here, the CF card is expanding to a full 63 gigabytes image. So this will really be your 63 gigabyte hard disk on your V4, which you can expand to the full maximum size of your CF card, which I'm going to show you later on. If I double click on the SD card, it will unzip into a SD0 folder, which is a very important folder because it will contain all the installation files. So after this is unzipped, we can now start collecting all the source files and put them on the right place. Please use the checklist in the guide to make sure you have all the right files on all the right place, so the installation process will go smoothly. I have prepared here already my download files, so I'm just going to show you here how to put them on the right place. And please use the guide on help obtaining all these files. So for AmiKit, it's an archive file. Just copy it over like this. And for the Amiga OS 3.1 and 1.3.3, you can use the Amiga Forever as a source, or you can use other means. But these files, the floppy files and the ROM, should be there. And then for Amiga OS 3.2, you will need a copy of the physical CD, an ISO copy, and the latest update available from the Hyperion website. And we will copy them over like this. Then for Amiga OS 3.9, you will also have to retrieve somewhere on the Internet Archive the copy of the Amiga OS 3.9 CD, or buy a CD-ROM second hand. And just copy them over. You can see that the Boeing bags are already there provided. So for Amiga OS 1.3.3, there's only 2 floppy disks and the ROM. And you can see that there are already some patch files provided by ApolloBoot. And for 3.1.4.1, it's a zip file, the A1200 zip file, and of course also the update. And if you have bought licenses for iBrowse, MUI or Roadshow, you can copy them into the install folder like this. Okay, so now we have everything prepared on file level, but we also will need some images. You need to download images of Coffin, Caffeine, Aros Caffeine, and ApolloOS. I have them here, so please read the guide on how to obtain them. I just copy them over like this, and we will have the full base to work from. So now the next step is starting the Amiga emulator and work from there. Before we do that, we have to have the configuration file of the Amiga emulator on the right place. So I'm using FSUAE here, but there's also a configuration file for WinUAE. I have to copy this one over to the documents directory where FSUAE is keeping all this data, and then in the configuration folder you can just copy it over like this. Okay, so let's start the emulator. And as you can see, the configuration is there. Click on it and automatically it will set the right settings. We move over to the hard drive location, and there you can see my example of how the drives should be mounted. These are examples, so you have to click on these all yourself to set it right for your situation. Let's do it right now. Browse for file, and then you can select the CF card image. Then next thing, we will start with the ApolloOS, which is also here. ApolloOS, there it is. Then Coffin. There it is. And the last one is not an image but a folder. You should open a folder and point it to your created SD0. So this is how it should look like. You don't have to change anything else except the ROM. The ROM is pointed here to my location, but you have to make sure that you point it to your download location, the SD0 folder, kickstarts, and then Apollo ROM UAE. Please click Save so you can save this, and now we are ready to start with the emulator by clicking Start. I push here the full screen option, and when it starts it will provide you with a pre-flight check. You can check if everything is okay with your setup. It will say, of course, that all the installations has to be done. It checks the partitions for archive and personal, and here you can see by the source image mounts that it has found ApolloOS and the Coffin, and you can see in the bottom row here that all sources for Amiga OS and the other stuff in the SD0 folder are okay. So this is how it should look like. If it doesn't look like this, please go back to the previous step and then continue. Okay, if everything is okay, you will be presented by the ApolloBoot main menu like this. You can see everything in one view. And basically from here it's very straightforward. Here are the operating systems. By clicking you can install them. Let's look at the bottom two, Tools and Configure. So if I click on Tools, you have a complete file manager. You can do manual partition operations here. You can expand to the maximum size. This one is actually only available if we have moved over to the V4 itself. You can backup or update your personal stuff. You can update ApolloBoot itself here. You can update the operating system settings if you have done an ApolloBoot update and you want to push all the new stuff also to the installed operating systems. If needed, you can clear the ApolloBoot image completely to factory defaults, And you have some tools like the sysinfo, like snapshotting your icons if you want to, and of course the Apollo Explorer tool for transferring files. If we look at the configure menu, you can set the speed of the IDE, you can set the beep on or off, you can select your favorite network stack, and you can select if you want it on boot or not, the time synchronization, the display mode, the zoom modes, and the default game modes, scanline and sync modes, all the Apollo default settings you want to. You can always do this later, so no need to do it right here, but I just want to show you those two. So to start installation, just from top to bottom, we start with ApolloOS. Clicking on it, it will start the installation process. And when finished with ApolloOS, press enter to return to the main menu. Then it will show in the pre-flight check that ApolloOS is indeed installed. And then we can move over to Coffin. So now Coffin is installed. And we return to the pre-flight check where we can see that Coffin is registered, and we continue with AmiKit. There you can choose which underlying operating system, and it will start installation. Please mind that if it doesn't finish within 30 minutes, please retry and restart the session. So after finishing AmiKit, we go back to the menu and we start with the AmigaOS range, starting with AmigaOS 1.3.3. And after that's finished, we can move over to AmigaOS 3.1. And when 3.1 is finished, we can move to the 3.9 installation. So finished with 3.9, moving over to 3.1.4. And finished with 3.1.4, we can do the last of the AmigaOS series, the 3.2, with the 3.2.2 update. English only, it's okay for me. So this concludes the AmigaOS series. So what's left now is AROS Caffeine and macOS. For AROS Caffeine, we have to leave now the emulator and mount the image. And instead of ApolloOS, I'm going to reject this and I'm going to do the AROS Caffeine, the image there, and restart. You can see here it has recognized Caffeine, and I can click for installation. So this concludes AROS Caffeine. Now for the last operating system, macOS, we have to leave the emulator because we want to download the additional disk files. So on the download side, you have the macOS folder. Then you can download the games and the Office disks, which contains a nice complete setup of games and Office on the macOS Classic. It's really great to experience those. So let's wait a few moments for the download to finish. So the downloads are finished. Let's check them out in the folder. Here you can see them in zipped format. So let's unzip them both. And when they are unzipped, it's important to move them over to the macOS folder on the SD0 folder, because else they won't get picked up. So move them over like this. And if they're here, they will be picked up. You see that the macOS 8.1 is already provided, and those are the two additional disks. So let's go back to the emulator, start it. And now we can proceed with installing macOS. You have to have the Coffin image still mounted, so be aware of that. This concludes the macOS installation, and being the last operating system to be installed, we are now finished with the image preparation, and our next step is to flash the image onto the physical CF card. So we're going to leave the emulator, and then we're going to start our Balena Etcher program, which is available for Mac, PC and Linux systems. Very easy to use. Just plug in your CF card, then it will give you a warning, just ignore and say flash from file, go to your download directory and choose the CF card image, which is now completely loaded with all operating systems. Again, it will give you a warning because the Mac and PCs and Linux cannot read Amiga formatted hard drives, that's all. Select target. Be very careful to choose the right one. You can erase your remote disk with this and do flash. Provide your password and here we go. So let's wait a few minutes for the flashing, including the verify, to complete. Very important to not skip the verify part to be sure that you have a solid flashed CF card. So the flash is completed successfully. We can remove the CF card and go to the next step, which is of course the V4. Welcome to step 3, where the fun begins, actually using ApolloBoot OMNI and all the operating systems we installed. So to get started, I insert my CF card into my V4 standalone. And because it's the first time it boots on the V4 standalone, it will recognize a host change and set the configurations for you automatically. And it will do the same if you change to Firebird, Icebreaker, Manticore, so you have full mobility implemented. The main menu is the same as on the emulator, but instead of installing, you can launch an operating system by clicking on it. Before I'm going to do that, I'm going to do a little demonstration of slow install. And slow install means you put the content of the SD0 folder onto a SD card and put it in your V4 like this, and then you can install any operating system from the SD card to the CF card on your V4. So for that I'm going to use Tools and Format Partition to clear one of the operating systems, 133. Let's kill it. And when it's erased, we can do the installation easy. From the main menu, we just click on Amiga OS 133. It will recognize that it's empty, looks for the SD card for installation, and start the installation procedure the same as on the emulator. This is a slow install because it's slow. So for Amiga OS it's fine, it just takes a few minutes. But for the larger OSs like Caffeine, ApolloOS, AmiKit and especially Coffin, it can take up to hours. In the case of Coffin, it can take even 24 hours or more. So please use the turbo install. You can even use the turbo install with your CF card. I will show you that in the frequently asked questions. So let's now start our journey through all the OSs, and we're best to start the journey with Amiga OS 133. I choose the PAL mode for the scan lines vertical, and it will bring my workbench 1.3 the way I looked at it the first time I was turning on my Amiga 1000. So it's very nice to have. For me, it's a nice retro feeling, and I try not to change anything. So the only thing added by ApolloBoot is the SCSI driver for hard disk access and a nice classics drawer with some classics. So let's check it out. If you click on the classics, you will see Boring Demo, Defender of the Crown, D-Paint, and who doesn't remember the Juggler? Juggler was one of the things I was very amazed of at the time, and it's still very nice to look at today. Okay, to end Amiga OS, I have to power off my V4 and power on again. This is the only operating system which needs power off. The rest is seamless switching without any power cycle. Okay, back to the main menu. We now continue our journey to 3.1, the first more mature operating system for the Amiga, and it has much more tools and much more possibilities included. So ApolloBoot OMNI does add some new configurations and data types and tooling into the bare installation of Amiga OS, but it tries to stay clean. So it's kind of a middle way between a full installation bloated with everything and a very bare metal where you have all kinds of stuff you need to do yourself. So this is easy for you as a user because everything is there and you can change it anyway the way you like it. One of the first things you might notice, you have archives and personal here, which are always available for all operating systems to have access to the centralized demos and games and all your personal stuff. So one of the key features of ApolloBoot OMNI is that you can really use those from all operating systems. For all the tooling you need on a day-by-day basis, you have the dock here, and I will get into the tooling and the dock and other stuff in the next chapter. First, focus on changing all the operating systems. So let's continue from 3.1 to 3.9. 3.9 is actually the latest version in the classic Amiga era, made by Haga and partners and helped by the community with boring bags 3 and 4, and those are all implemented by ApolloBoot OMNI to give you a nice end of state situation as it was when it ended a few decades ago. But then with the 3.1.4, Hyperion brought us a new generation of the old Amiga OS. They did a great job and are still doing a great job. And you can enjoy this on the V4 together with the 3.1.4.1 update. Gives a nice operating system, very solid. Please buy it secondhand somewhere. It's not available anymore from the shops. What you can buy in the shops today is the 3.2 and of course the recent 3.2.2 update, and those run really smooth on the V4 and give you the latest Amiga OS on any Amiga platform today. And as you can see, it runs the same, smooth as ever. So this completes a quick journey of the Amiga OS. And now we go to Apollo OS, which is the ROS-based operating system from the Apollo team, giving us the opportunity to develop a new operating system level functionality based on our hardware developments. It's open source and it's greatly thanks to the ROS team who made the foundation. The Apollo team is adding on top of that. So the only difference between the Apollo OS that is shipped with your V4 is that there's an icon included for ApolloBoot. And of course, there's the access to the central archives and personal. And to reflect that central archives, you have here an extra games and demos icon to give you a nice iGame access to those games and demos. So let's move over from Apollo OS to Coffin. And Coffin is really one of the most famous and greatest distribution made by Amiga enthusiasts and includes almost everything you can think of in terms of games, demo applications, and it's very nice configured. And actually we have to thank a lot the Coffin team because ApolloBoot OMNI uses the archives from Coffin to share with all the other operating systems. So the same as with Apollo OS and AmiKit and everything, ApolloBoot OMNI stays true with the original distribution. So the only thing added is an extra icon and the access to archives and personal. So let's move over to the next. That's AmiKit XE, which is some kind of special because AmiKit itself does not have V4 support. I myself give the support for ApolloBoot OMNI and also available in the Discord channel of AmiKit. And you have to do some special things. So first you have to hold both mouse buttons down when installing first time. This is to do some settings needed for the first time setup. Set the boot device to DH4, disable the update ROM module, and then we can start the AmiKit XE installation process on the V4. It will check if ApolloBoot OMNI has placed the source files at the correct locations to install, and hopefully it will check out. It does. So we can continue. Please sit back and relax. So let's do that. Okay, so that was nice relaxation. And now it will ask us the IDE speed settings. Let's go for save. You can always change that later. And here you can see that ApolloBoot does an env error fix for the Amiga OS 3.2 env error issue. It's fixed automatically. So now we can continue with AmiKit XE on our Apollo V4. We pray everything went okay. And then we will start AmiKit for the first time. There it is. The gorgeous screen layout and very nice taken care of by Jen from AmiKit, which gives us really complete distro. This is the 11.3 version, but because AmiKit has an online updater, it will recognize that it has to be updated. So let's do that. So after download, it will ask us to reboot. Let's do that. And if everything went okay, we now have a complete up-to-date AmiKit XE 11.5 running on our Apollo V4. Easy like this. Okay. Well, let's move over to our final Amiga-based operating system, which is AROS Caffeine, made by Pedro Cotter. Very nice AROS-based distribution with very nice features included. Really worthwhile to check it out. As you can see, very nice.
Hello, how are you today? This is Amiga speaking. Welcome to Caffeine OS. Quick basic settings setup. Please choose your keyboard and mouse settings.
Very nicely done by Pedro. Thanks again for allowing Caffeine to be on ApolloBoot OMNI. Okay, so now we have all the Amiga OSs running, but we also have the possibility to do a sidestep. And the first sidestep I'm going to show you is a sidestep to Mac. As you all know, Mac also used the Motorola 68K series, so why not run the classic Mac OS 8.1 on our V4? ApolloBoot has a complete implementation of that, and as you can see, it really changes into a Mac look and feel, giving you access to the base operating system empty or to the games or Office disk we added later. So let's check out the basic operating system. If you click on it, it will start, and just like that, your V4 is becoming a classic Mac OS. How nice is this? This is a full 720p resolution, and just say shut down, and I can shut down and get back to the main menu for the Mac. And from there I can choose to go back to the ApolloBoot itself or to start another disk. Let's try the games disk, because always nice to have things like Leisure Street Larry or Dark Forces all there. So let's go back to the menu again. Then I'm going to show you a feature which is really nice if you really into using Mac. You want to change files between the Mac operating system and other operating systems on your ApolloBoot OMNI. Then you can use the exchange here. And I can say, okay, I want to exchange files with the basic Mac OS file disk. It will start it up. on the left hand side. On the right hand side it will start up Dopus, so you can do easy file transfer. Back to ApolloBoot. Going to leave now the Mac and go all the way to Atari. So for Atari, you need a EmuTOS on the SD card flash. I have to put it into my V4. The EmuTOS image is included in the SD0 folder. Just flash it with Boolean Etcher. And now clicking on EmuTOS, it will hopefully transform your Amiga into an Atari. God forbid. But there's a nice active Atari community within Apollo, so please check them out and give them really the credits they deserve, especially Olivier Landemar, who made this beautiful distro, and check it out. It's really great. So then we have one bonus left. To exit the EmuTOS, I'm going to just power off and power on again. And the one bonus left is a tiny little thing called Tiny Launcher. And Tiny Launcher is especially there on ApolloBoot for our gamers and demos who want to spend a few hours after some hard work to relax with games and demos. And what Tiny Launcher is a very small framework only using a kickstart and then directly starting WHD load. So all the thanks to Michael Gibbs, who allowed me to use Tiny Launcher on ApolloBoot. And as you can see, it runs quickly, it has a nice menu, and you can use the Apollo Zoom feature with the joypad as an easy way to just change the zoom mode and even vertically and horizontally adjust the screen so you have real optimal pixel perfect settings for all your games and demos. Check it out, the separate video about Apollo Zoom. Let's here see if we can run a game. Just do Shift and the first letter to go to all the titles. There are the same archive as on the rest, so we can choose from 3,500 games, and I like Speedball 2 because I played it a lot and I like to play it still. So it really does nothing more than start up WHD load, and then you can see it's nicely running full screen, and you can even interactively now again with the joypad adjust the zoom mode and everything. So what a nice way to spend an afternoon. So this concludes the journey of all the AmigaOSs. The next step is to look into the tools. Welcome to step 4, where we talk about the tools in ApolloBoot. Of course, everyone knows the tools and configure options in the ApolloBoot main menu. They're also well described in the manual. So I want to focus now on the tools that are inside the OSs. And for that, I'm going to start Apollo OS, but the same tools I will show you are also in the other OSs. So first thing, I will look at the dock, which gives access to the ApolloBoot icon we already used to switch between the OSs, but also has a nice feature called cross mount or X mount, which will give you access to a partition of another operating system. So for example, I'm now on Apollo OS and I want to access the second disk of Coffin. I click on it and ApolloBoot will automatically mount it for me, and I can access this and use it for transfer data or other stuff. It's very nifty. Other stuff on the dock is the CLI command line. Of course, a nice browser, the iBrowse 258. Very much encourage you to buy the official key. We have the Dopus file manager. We have a nice editor for editing files. And we have, of course, the Amiga Amp player to play your music. And if you want to open something, it will redirect you automatically to the personal folder, so you have all your stuff there. We also have a nice picture viewer, and there you can just use it for displaying all picture formats that are supported. Just click on anything and it will display it, and also has a nice slideshow feature. Then of course we have the Riva video player optimized for video playback, and what you can see is that you have picture-in-picture, but also full screen display. Very nice, very smooth. Okay, and then we have the iGame for the access to the WHD load, the games, and the demos. And last we have the disk image to mount virtual drives, floppy disks or CD-ROMs. So those are the basic tools in the dock. So let's clean up a little bit and then go to the tools folder, which also have some nice tools you can use. And well, we do Apollo Explorer the last. Let's look at Apollo Flash. Apollo Flash, if you open it, it will ask you for a JIG or a ROM file, and you can flash a complete core or just a kickstart ROM from Apollo OS or each other OS with Apollo Flash. Apollo Floppy is only available for standalone for mounting a virtual floppy and being able to boot from it. Apollo Mac, actually a nice tool if you have several v4s like me. I want to set the MAC address to a specific MAC address so it doesn't conflict with each other. So just a one-time setting, and now it's set to unit number 4. So opening the tools again, we'll go to Apollo Max, which is a tool which will resize your CF to the maximum size. And then it will be able to add additional partitions. Apollo Mon, a very nice tool made by Flybe, who also made Apollo WHD set and also the Apollo control you all well know, and it gives you nice real-time feature of showing the CPU and chip mem and fast mem figures. Press escape to leave it. Apollo Shield for protecting extra against crashes, and the Apollo WHD set tool, which I'm going into right now. If I'm opening it with some specific WHD load icon, it will give me the zoom settings for this game or demo. I can set the game speed, the superscalar, the zoom mode, the vertical and horizontal shifts, and I can force it to AGA or OCS, and I can set the scan lines on and off. And it will save this actually in the icon, so it's always there when I start Pinball Dreams in this case. Really nice feature, also thanks to Flybe who made this. And then to use Apollo Zoom interactively, you have the joypad, and for that I included the picture with the control features of the Apollo joypad. So also very nice cheat sheet if you want to know which button is which. Okay, there's also a lot of other tools here for archiving and basic graphics things, PDF viewer and FTP, etc. Please check them out, they're really intuitive. So let's look at Apollo Explorer, because Apollo Explorer is a very nifty tool. It's a tool for transferring data. So if I open it like this, you see a Apollo Explorer running here. And now if I make a switch quickly to my desktop to do the client part, you can see here the client part, then you will see it pops up as a standalone, and I can open it and I can just transfer files to it. Also nice is that if I have multiple v4s, I will click here on my Ice Drake and also on my Manticore. One moment. Then all will pop up and you can just really easily control from your Mac or PC or Linux all these systems. So let's use this standalone to copy some data. I have a nice new wallpaper here from John from AltVamp. I'm going to switch back now to my V4 settings, because what I wanted to show you is something really nice in the latest course. So first, let us use the new wallpaper. WHD pattern, select, we put it in the RAM disk, so it should be there. There it is, and we say use. And there it is. Okay, so did John make a mistake because this looks like a full HD wallpaper? No, he did not make a mistake, because in the new Apollo course, which will be released hopefully not all too long from now, we will be having full HD display capabilities. So to show this off, I can look at my Saga settings here, and you will see it has support for a lot more display modes, most importantly the full HD. I have to click the right one, that's this one. I can say save, and if everything goes okay, I have now full HD display. Wow. Okay, this concludes this video about ApolloBoot Omni. I hope you enjoy it, and see you next time. Frequently asked questions number 1. Well, for some reason you start an OS and it crashes, or some other way you can't get out of it anymore. What are you going to do? Well, quite easy, just follow these steps. Use the power off to power off your V4 and wait a few seconds to power on again. And during power on, hold both the mouse buttons down to enter the early startup menu. And there you can choose boot options, DH99, which is the boot partition of boot, use, and then boot with no startup sequence. And just type in the command line execute AB recover, enter, and it will bring you back in a few seconds to the ApolloBoot main menu, and you can start reinstall or investigation of your OS. Frequently asked question number 2. You have a brand new SD card and you want to make sure it's compatible with your V4. Okay, make sure you have it formatted in FAT32. You can do that on Mac, Linux or PCs. I'm going to demonstrate it on my Mac. For the Windows or PC, you use the Rufus tool. Here I have the SD card, and as you can see, you can read it, so you might think FAT32 is okay, but please check it with disk util or with Rufus on Windows, and then you can see actually what is on the file system. And in this case it's exFAT, it's not good, so I have to really reformat it explicitly to FAT32. It's done in a second, and then you have it here, FAT32, and it's ready for usage on the V4. Frequently asked question number 3 is about the CF card. Can you mount the CF card and use turbo install? Yes, you can, just follow a few steps. Insert the CF card so it's connected to your PC or Mac or Linux system. Ignore the warning. Then on the Mac system and Linux system we have to check out which device number it is. It's not necessary for Windows. So we open a terminal and we type in disk-util list. And then you can see that it's registered as /dev/disk4. We have to give exit with sudo chmod lucky number 777 /dev/disk4 and make sure it's the right disk. It will ask for your password, and now it's done. So now we can move over to the emulator. For the Windows, this is the first step. And then make sure that you eject the first drive and also all the other drives. And you go to the additional configuration, the gear bar, and there you can tell with hard_drive_0 equals /dev/disk4 that this one is going to be your first hard disk only for this configuration. So we can check it here. It says now /dev/disk4, and we're going to start it. It's going to show us the ApolloBoot OMNI menu. Of course, it's a host change, so we have to reconfigure, and now it's there. And you can do the same turbo install as you did with the file image. Be very careful not to remove the CF card after closing the emulator, really making sure there's no disk access, else you can really mess up your CF card. Well, this concludes the ApolloBoot OMNI video guide. Thank you all so much for watching and using ApolloBoot OMNI. And I would like to thank especially the Corviot, Weiser, and of course Tim and UGI Flip for helping me with the beta test team. Thank you all so much and see you next time.